We are back yet again here on the thiccmaninc podcast, and this week we have many scintillating and percolating topics to discuss with you, dear viewers. But first, we have a topic which is very near and dear to my heart. That is the Buffalo Bills and their recent decline. And I was so sure the Bills had it put together this year. They had it figured out. That one loss to the Steelers, pshaw, nothing. They were going to sweep the table, go 15-1, 16-1, 17 games is stupid, and tramps on through the playoffs. But instead, they are a lowly 7-6 and fighting for a wildcard spot. And this is for many reasons, but I would like to first state there is one man who is not to blame, and that man is the great Josh Allen. Josh Allen is in no way responsible for the Bills' decline this season. He is doing everything he can, and is just not quite good enough. I'll let you know a little spoiler, folks. No quarterback in the league would have this team a much better record. It's just Josh Allen. He's that good. He's one of the best. He might be the best in a few years, but I digress.
Well,
the real issue is their O-line is very unfortunate. That is the best way I can think to say it. Not particularly good blockers. Their tackles are fairly solid in pass protection, so he doesn't get lit up consistently in the passing game compared to some other teams. It's not as bad, but the interior of that offensive line is sorry, and it doesn't let them run the ball. And I don't know if that's because they have zero confidence in their running backs or outside running, but they don't run the ball at all. It becomes very obvious what they're doing, and really is a shame. Why do you think they don't run the ball, Tristan?
I made a TikTok about this topic already.
Follow our TikTok.
But after watching the Bills lose to yet another team that is looking to compete for a Super Bowl, I think they're completely cooked when it comes to considering them as a Super Bowl contender. I think they have little to zero chance of winning 3 or 4 playoff games in a row. And a little bit of the pushback that I received on TikTok from some Bills fans or NFL, or, just our fans in general, because, we have so many of those, is that they played the Bucs close and they were close to winning the game and they brought the game to overtime. But my rebuttal to that would be, so you all of a sudden trust them to win games like that after losing those types of games all season and do that multiple times in a row to win a Super Bowl? I just don't see that happening. Their on the field play is way too inconsistent, and Isaiah spoke to this a little bit already, but their roster flaws and mainly offensive philosophy, they're not going to help them win games. And we saw in the Patriots game, they don't have the ability to win ugly under bad weather conditions. They cannot run the ball, and a lot of people are pointing to their running back personnel, but I don't even necessarily think that's the biggest issue. I'm not in love with their 3 running backs, their trio of running backs, but I also don't hate their running backs.
I'll jump in here for I feel you are being a little disingenuous when you mention the loss to the Buccaneers. You know and I know there was a distinct third party playing a role in that loss. The pass interference which was and the pass interference which was not. One was called, one wasn't. You know what I'm talking about. That game goes completely differently if Diggs getting tackled in the end zone is rightly so awarded a penalty. Instead, what are you going to do? The refs are always going to have Brady's side. Bills very easily could have won that game. Then you look at the bad weather game, as you put it. Bad weather does not do that game justice. There were 500-mile-an-hour winds coming out of the east. Josh Allen could not throw the ball more than 3 yards before it went into the upper atmosphere thanks to the wind pressure. Kickers were getting slapped in the face as soon as the ball left their foot. It was a bad show all around. You cannot blame a pass-heavy offense for losing that game. What I can blame, however, is the Bills' run defense. And their run defense is pretty bad. And by pretty bad, I mean real bad. And by real bad, I mean one of the worst in the NFL when they have to play good running backs. Don't get me wrong, they lock up teams like the Jaguars, the Jets, and the Saints on the ground, but then they have to deal with playoff Lenny, they have to deal with the wonders that are King Henry, and just a bunch of very solid running backs, Jonathan Taylor, and they keep getting gouged by them. And the real problem with this, they play in a conference with a bunch of good running backs. They will have to beat multiple good running backs or running teams in the playoffs in order to advance, and they're not going to be able to do that. That is why they are truly cooked.
Well, that's comes down to, I kind of gave a rebuttal to that line of thinking already. Is like, okay, fine, maybe they win the Bucs game, but when there's less than ideal circumstances, the Bills have shown time and time again the inability to come up clutch and win those games or win those games convincingly. And you spoke to the run game, but their offense is the biggest issue, and they don't have the worst offense. They have a solid offense through the air. It really comes down to offensive philosophy. In the games they've lost, their average rush attempts from their running backs is around 12, which is even inflated by the fact in the Patriots game, they had 19 attempts due to the bad weather. When the Bills' offense and its success relies entirely on Josh Allen's ability to jump over someone or throw the ball 70 yards downfield, it is going to be a lot harder to succeed. You look at some of the other offenses in the AFC, the Ravens offense, which runs through Lamar, they still run the ball effectively with their running backs and make an effort to integrate them within their offense. I mean, Devonta Freeman has had a couple big games where he came in clutch, had goal line carries, and then you look at the Bills offense, and the feeling I get when watching the Bills offense operate is that they're only handing it to the running backs because they feel like they have to hand it to the running backs. It does not feel like the handoff to Zach Moss to the right or a pitch to Breida on the right or any type of handoff to the running back has any purpose in a play call sequence or purpose to that drive. When they integrate Josh Allen into the run game, he's successful because he's good at it, and it does feel like it has some type of purpose. So I think that's what they do poorly with their offense is they don't integrate running backs well into their game plan, and it's more even that they feel like they have to do it. And then you look at a team like the Chiefs, who maybe the Bills are even trying to imitate. The Chiefs this year have finally, or the Chiefs later in the season after they lost a bunch of games, realized that the run game needs to play a key part in their ability to convert touchdowns in the red zone, and they started utilizing the run more on first, second, and third down to allow them to pass the ball down the field more or take advantage of the play action game more.
The Chiefs also got to play a Charmin ultra soft schedule for the past few games.
Think it really comes down to the Bills' offensive philosophy, and the way they integrate the run with the pass is their biggest issue on the offensive side of things.
Now, something we said for the fact their offense solely relying on Josh Allen and nothing else, and everybody knowing it still results in a 7-win team, testament to the greatness of that man. But I sort of agree with you. I think the defensive run stopping is more of an issue because, let's be frank, if you're having to pass the entire game, that makes it a lot harder to run because if teams can just gouge you on the ground early, you know you've got to pass to get back in the game, so defenses can just drop 8 men back in coverage and ruin Josh Allen's passing game. He still finds some success. He's a really good quarterback, but can't have the true success he's accustomed to because they are playing the pass so heavy. Part of that's the running game, part of that's the circumstances.
Yeah, well, I understand that's part of the circumstances of the game, but it's still the way they call the game, in my opinion, because you look at the Chiefs and they're still, passing 60 to 70, an insane amount of times during a game. But type of run plays they're calling, when they call run plays with the running backs, it feels more integrated and complementary to their passing game. Whereas with the Bills, I feel like that's not so much the case. And, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched every single Bills game, but from the games I have watched and when I watched them be unsuccessful, that's what I'm taking away from the game.
Well, what I'm taking away from this game is that you're a huge hater. The Bills will win out
if you want to say
the Super Bowl, but they might. They do not play anyone the rest of their schedule, which helps for the playoff push.
So you want to stick with the AFC? Who's the AFC favorite, Isaiah?
The AFC favorite, clearly the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't dance in their grave for too long. Celebrate when they were 5-5, not 5-5, 4-4 at the start of the year. They've won 5 straight. Not a good idea to celebrate the downfall of a dynasty. That dynasty come right back, punch you in the mouth. They're clearly the best team in the AFC. There's no contest. There's no conversation. They will humiliate the Patriots if given the opportunity. Mac Jones ain't ready for the playoffs. He doesn't do well in the cold. We saw him doing that penguin shuffle to the huddle in the Bills game last week. So they're clearly the top dog. You cannot sit here and tell me you don't think the Chiefs would dominate anyone in the AFC.
Well, I'm going to agree with you, but that the video that we posted on TikTok where you talked about the Chiefs, some people may call you a bit of a flip-flopper. They weren't too happy with your take on the Chiefs.
The key is to be consistently inconsistent.
But, speaking to the Patriots, I think they are one of the most well-rounded teams in the NFL from a roster standpoint. I mean, they have 2 great tight ends. They have a great defense all around. The Matthew Judon signing was terrific. They have good corners. Kyle Duggar's been a good safety for him. And they have the ability to win ugly games, which we saw against the Bills because of how good Damian Harris is and how good Ramondre Stevenson is. That being said, I don't think they actually are. And it comes down to the Chiefs have been there before, and the Chiefs should be the favorites. They have a chance to go to their 3rd Super Bowl in a row.
Patriots have also been there before. Just going to throw that out there. You're kind of overlooking a dynasty, which ended a few years ago.
I mean,
Still got some hangover
The
from
team
that.
has been there before, but there is not much
Experience within the active players. They still got enough starters and key contributors hanging over. I don't really agree with that point in particular. Also, the guys who came in young, who may not have been there for
Name
the
the
tail
starters
end of that.
on the offense that are carryover from the last
Are you
time they
going to
won a
make
Super
me
Bowl.
consult the great ESPN to look at their offensive line starters?
Well, Damian Harris wasn't. Ramondre Stevenson wasn't. Neither of the tight ends were on the team at the time. I don't think Jacoby Myers was on the team at the time. So none of the key players on their offense were on the last
None
Super
of their
Bowl
key
team.
players on their offense were on the last Super Bowl. You know, there are these 5 guys up front, Tristan, who kind of are important. There's this fellow named Isaiah Wynn. I believe he has a ring to his name. Shrimp Brown there?
I don't think he may have been injured at the time because that might have been when he was drafted. Anyway, this is a stupid argument.
It's not a stupid argument. The people who weren't there have experience in that winning culture if they came in after the fact. The culture doesn't disappear because they stopped winning. And really, they never stopped winning. They had one down season with Cameron Newton, and then they immediately went back to winning.
You know, they definitely have a winning culture. It's better than most cultures in the NFL. I mean, it's better than the Jets culture, or it's, you know, better than the Browns culture. But back to the Chiefs. They have won 6 games in a row, 7 of their last 8. And in all those wins, their defense has been very good. They've held opponents to 17 or less points in every single one of those games. I think the most points a team has scored in the games they've won is actually the Giants. And in 4 of those games that they've won, they've held their opponents to less than 10 points. Their defense is no longer a liability. And I think one of the most underrated signings is the fact where trades, I'm pretty sure they traded for Melvin Ingram, and he gave them the roster flexibility to move Chris Jones back inside, and he's been dominant there. He's been, from games I've watched, he's been popping off the screen constantly. And, you know, Isaiah, a couple weeks ago, people won't even remember this, but you alluded to the fact that Chris Jones and Tyrann Mathieu were cooked. They've both returned to the prominence, and it does look like
I said Chris Jones was cooked
money.
because they moved him to defensive end and were paying him defensive end money. He's still overpaid for a nose tackle or a 3 technique. Like, you can't ignore that context. He was cooked as an end, and they had to make a trade to save him.
You did not say he was
cooked
as
an
end.
You just
said that Chris Jones and Tyrann Mathieu were cooked.
You fool. You are trying to undermine me. I thought we said a while ago we weren't going to try and do these little gotcha modes like, oh, look bad or wrong. Because if we want to do that, you don't win this argument, pal. I can go find so many glacial takes of yours. I can go comb through that TikTok, and we can just sit here and have a podcast of, oh, you said that and we're wrong. Oh, I said this and that was wrong. If you want to do that, by all means, I win that little debate. But if you want to talk about the honey badger being wrong, I may have been wrong on that. I don't know. Let's see what our friends at PFF say about his film, since he's got such a wonderful relationship with them. But Chris Jones was cooked as a defensive end, and they had to make a trade to save him.
Let me speak to the more conventional Chiefs haters and the more conventional Chiefs detractors that somehow think the Chiefs are some terrible team just because Patrick Mahomes has had some games where he didn't play out of his mind. I think that whole concept is ridiculous. The Chiefs offense is still top 5 in yards per game, and it's still a top 10 scoring offense. I think they're sitting at 8. They're still putting up numbers, but because Patrick Mahomes is on pace to throw for 32 touchdowns instead of 50, people think he's cooked, or they think he's not at least the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL. I've seen some people say he's not even top 5. They're super delusional. And to these people, when Tom Brady won a Super Bowl in 2004, he threw 28 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. His 5th year in the league. In 2019, when he won the Super Bowl, he threw 29 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. So can we stop this narrative that the Chiefs can't win a Super Bowl because Patrick Mahomes isn't on pace to throw for over 40 touchdowns? The people that are saying that, I just think are so incompetent.
Tristan, you care too much about the opinions of 12-year-olds on TikTok. You keep alluding to these faceless masses. These faceless masses still get their shoes tied for them by their parents and get excited when they see Lunchables in their backpack.
I know you're an avid Twitter user. You're
telling
me
the avid
you
Twitter
don't
users
see
are also
making
12
that
years
argument.
old. What the fuck do you think this is? Everyone online I do not know personally is 12 in my opinion. And every person who claims to be a woman is in fact not a woman. I don't care what voice changer they're using. They're an 80-year-old man who wants pics of your Johnson. But they will not be getting pics of my Johnson. Thank you very much.
So when it comes down to it, the Chiefs' offense isn't necessarily as good as it has been, but there is always that potential because they still have all of their key players on the team. Their offensive line is better than it was when they played the Bucs in the Super Bowl. Bowl last year, and their defense is objectively much better the way it's been playing over the last 8 weeks. So they have an elite quarterback. They have a better defense. They know what it takes to make it to the Super Bowl. They have to be the favorites in the AFC. I don't understand how anyone can say anything else. Some people now are saying, oh, the Chargers have to be the favorites, but Justin Herbert has never been there. He's never made it to a Super Bowl. So now,
who is saying the Chargers are the favorites? Find me a verified Twitter account which says that. I beg you. We will consult out the program. Tristan will edit it in if he manages to find this. But I don't know, man. You're propping up some straw man arguments here. It's about to turn into a political podcast real quick.
I'm not even saying that the majority of people are disagreeing with me. I'm saying there are some people that disagree, and these are some of the teams that people have thrown out. I've seen people throwing out arguments for. So probably think at this point, 70% of people probably think the Chiefs are the favorite, and 20% think the Patriots are the favorite, and then the rest of the percentages are split up. It's not like I'm saying, oh, I'm fighting for the little man, the Chiefs, they're being downed by everyone. It may sound like that a little bit, I guess, but in reality, that's not what I actually think.
Well, you talked about experience in the Super Bowl, a team which has zero experience in the Super Bowl in recent memory, but has plenty of NFC Championship game experience, is the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Packers have seized a hold on the 1 seed in the NFC, but let's be honest with ourselves, we have all seen this song and dance before. We know how this is going to go. They are not the best team in the NFL, they're not the best team in the NFC, and they're going to lose at best in the NFC Championship game. There are too many good teams in the NFC where the Packers just aren't going to be able to win. You put them up against the Buccaneers, we know what happens in that game. Aaron Rodgers refuses to run. You put them up against the Rams with the return of Odell Beckham Jr. to form. I don't think that game goes the same as it did last time. Stafford might turn to Matt Stafford real quick on him. You put them up against the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals could be a real threat if Kyler Murray ever manages to unbreak himself, but let's be honest, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. So I don't think they're getting through those 3 teams. I wouldn't say they're a top 3 team in the NFC. Might be better than the Cardinals, not better than the Rams or the Patriots, or Rams and the Bucks.
I think the Packers are the best team in the NFL. I don't really see an argument for any other team. I think they have the best resume of any other team in the NFL at this point in the season. And from a talent standpoint, no one is really close to the Packers. They found a way to beat the Cardinals when their entire wide receiving core was injured, and they lost Robert Tonyan during that game because Aaron Rodgers is that guy. The win over the Cardinals proved that the Packers can win a game given adversity and less than ideal conditions, which is very important come playoff time. On Monday night, we also saw the Rams beat the Cardinals, and the Packers easily handled the Rams. The score was closer than the final result in the Packers-Rams game, but the Packers ran the ball 30 times. They spread the ball around to 8 different players through the air, and they found a way to win. Finally, they do have 3 losses on their schedule, but 2 of them don't and shouldn't count. I'm not going to say don't count because they did count. 2 of them shouldn't count. They would have beat the Chiefs if Jordan Love wasn't starting and wasn't playing, if Aaron Rodgers never got COVID. And then the loss to the Saints. Who really cares? Week 1 doesn't matter. The Jaguars won a game last year in week 1. It was their only win of the season. I've made that point multiple times. And then their only other loss on the schedule is to the Vikings. That wasn't a good loss, but the Vikings decided to show up that game. It was a division rival. Division rivals sometimes find a way to win.
That's not
games.
a thing in the NFL.
It is a thing in the. What do you
Just
mean?
because the Giants beat the Cowboys once a decade when they shouldn't doesn't mean that's a thing. The rivalries are much more important in college football. They really don't matter in the NFL. But I'm going to go back to something you started your little tirade monologue and or rant. Packers are the most talented team in the NFL. Come on, man. Come on. You're better than that. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, playoff Lenny, Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Cameron Brate, Tom Brady, and that's just the offensive side of the ball. They got the best nose tackle in football. They got Richard Sherman in the secondary. They got the 3-fingered wonder on the defensive line. The Buccaneers are so much more talented than the Packers offensively. It is not even funny. I think their defenses are pretty comparable, but I take the Buccaneers. You just went on this rant about how the Chiefs had this experience. That's why they were in a perfect position. What team is more Super Bowl experience than a team led by Tom Brady, than a team which won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs last year? It is comical that you think they are even worth being mentioned in the same breath as the Buccaneers. We know how this song and dance goes. The Packers will be humiliated by a better team in the AFC Championship, and that team is going to be the Buccaneers.
Well, the best team doesn't always win the game. I think the Packers are the best team in the NFL, but if the Packers do have to play the Buccaneers in the playoffs, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous, and I'd be lying if I said I definitely think I'm going to take the Packers to win that game. I mean, everyone who who's ever talked about the 2008 Super Bowl between the Giants and Patriots, I think almost every person is going to say the Patriots were a better team except for me.
Eli can only get carried
I
by
think they're
his
the best
defense
team in the NFL. And I do agree with the sentiment that at this point, I'm on the bandwagon of don't bet against Tom Brady. So if they have to play the Buccaneers, it is going to be a close game. I just think the Packers are the best team in the NFL. And I also said that a couple weeks ago.
So the team which you think would beat the Packers in the head-to-head, which has the same record, which has more offensive talent, which has the greatest quarterback of all time.
I didn't say
they are a worse team than the team named the Green Bay Packers.
I mean, we've seen the Buccaneers lose games that they shouldn't have, that you kind of left you scratching your head about why they found a way to lose
the
that
Saints, right? That's crazy. Nobody would be able to do that. Imagine losing to a mediocre team.
Week one.
Still nailing their schedule, pal. I don't know what to tell you. Imagine losing to a team like the Vikings, a middling team who is barely on the fringes of the playoff picture. It happens, man. Like, look, Patriots lost to the Buccaneers lost to the football team. Packers lost to the Vikings. Every team's going to have weird losses. No team has a perfect schedule this year. It's not that type of season. But the fact you can come in here and say, oh, I think the Buccaneers would beat the Packers, but I think the Packers are better, is just, I don't get that sentiment.
The Buccaneers lost to the Saints with Trevor Siemian.
I don't care. But this is what we're going to close the podcast out. I've got a fun little factoid for you, Tristan. Are you ready for this factoid?
Sure. Is this going to be another the earth is flat, but we're talking
it's not
about soda?
The earth is flat, and that was a very hard-hitting question which you weren't ready for. Are you aware of the fact that when Eli Manning was competing in the Super Bowl and was winning playoff games, that his defense never allowed the offense to score more than 20 points, the opposing offense to score more than 20 points in a game Eli Manning won as a quarterback in the playoffs? Were you familiar with that fact?
I was not familiar with that specific fact.
How can you claim that he didn't get carried by his elite defense? I rest my case. Anyway, that has been this week's podcast. Let us know what you think down in the comment section below. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Follow us on TikTok if you're not somehow already following us, and we will see you later.
Isaiah knows how incredibly flawed his argument is, so that's why he's not letting me respond. Have a good one. Enjoy the podcast. We'll see you next week or whenever we see you.